Coming up on Arirang News. North Korea fired a number of short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast this morning. The launch, coming over a month after the last one, is in time with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to South Korea. And along with world leaders, Blinken joins President Yoon in countering digital threats to democracy. The third summit for democracy kicks off in Seoul, independently hosted for the first time outside the United States. Professors at South Korea's major medical schools have shown their intent to collectively resign starting next Monday. In the meantime, the government delivers public notice of return to work orders to more than 1,300 doctors. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with another missile launch by North Korea, resuming its provocations around a month after its last one. It comes days after a joint military drill between Seoul and Washington and coincides with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to South Korea for the Summit for Democracy. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung starts us off.
North Korea fired what is presumed to be multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea Monday morning. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected several SRBMs at 7:44 a.m. launched toward the East Sea from the Pyongyang area. It appears that at least 3 ballistic missiles flew approximately 300 kilometers northeast. The flight distance from Pyongyang to South Korea's Gaeryongdae military headquarters is also approximately 300 kilometers. Japanese authorities said the missiles reached a maximum altitude of about 50 kilometers. Given this data, experts believe it is likely that the SRBMs were KN-25s, which have allegedly been exported to Russia. South Korea's military strongly condemned North Korea's missile launch as a provocation that seriously threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The JCS added that it has strengthened surveillance and vigilance in preparation for additional launches and is maintaining a full readiness posture by closely cooperating with U.S. and Japanese authorities. According to Professor Yang Mu-jin at the University of North Korean Studies, the North's provocation has been timed to correspond with U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken's arrival in Seoul to attend the Summit for Democracy.
Considering that the launch coincided with U.S. Secretary of State Blinken's visit to South Korea, I believe the North intended to display discomfort and put pressure on the U.S.
The launch comes over a month after North Korea fired multiple rounds of cruise missiles toward the East Sea. It's the second ballistic missile launch of the year, with the previous launch coming in January. Experts believe North Korea has remained rather low-key over the past few weeks in terms of threats and provocations, even during Seoul and Washington's Freedom Shield military exercise that wrapped up last week due to important political events in Russia and China. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The visiting U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken was quick to condemn North Korea's latest round of missile launch and reaffirm America's commitment as he met South Korean President Yoon and Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul today in Seoul. Our correspondent Kim Jung-sil has more.
A scheduled luncheon meeting between the top diplomats of Seoul and Washington came amid yet another provocative act by Pyongyang on Monday morning. Foreign Minister Cho and his U.S. counterpart, Secretary Blinken, condemned North Korea's launches of what appeared to be multiple short-range ballistic missiles ahead of the third Summit for Democracy taking place in Seoul. Seoul's foreign ministry released a statement saying that the top diplomats agreed that Pyongyang's continued threats would only enhance cooperation between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, as well as the international community against the North. It added Secretary Blinken reaffirmed America's unwavering defense commitment to the security of South Korea. Minister Cho said even though the North has defined inter-Korean relations as those between hostile enemy states and announced that it will no longer seek reunification with the South, Seoul will continue to aim for reunification that extends freedom and basic human rights to all. This is the third time that the top diplomats of the allies have met in just a month. Before his talks with the foreign minister, the Secretary of State had a brief meeting with President Yoon. There, Mr. Blinken said the U.S. will always stand with South Korea for a firm response to North Korean provocations and for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula by continuing to strengthen extended deterrence through close cooperation. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
And along with world leaders, Blinken joins President Yoon in countering digital threats to democracy. The third Summit for Democracy kicks off in Seoul, independently hosted for the first time outside the United States. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
South Korea, the United States and the United Kingdom have called for solidarity in defending democracy for future generations amid fast-evolving digital changes that threaten freedom, human rights and prosperity. This came at the opening ceremony of the Third Summit for Democracy, which kicked off in Seoul on Monday, gathering world leaders, civil society and the private sector under the theme of democracy for the future generation. In his speech, President Yoon said artificial intelligence and new digital tools pose a double-edged sword to societies and individuals, citing fake news and disinformation as major threats. He also warned against a growing digital divide between nations that would widen economic gaps and, in turn, increase the democracy divide. He called for efforts to ensure digital progress goes hand in hand with democracy.
개인의 자유와 창의를 북돋우는 활기찬 민주주의는 청년들의 역량과 기회를 확장하는 촉진제가 될 것이며 이를 통해 우리의 미래 세대는 민주주의에 대해 더욱 확고한 믿음을 갖게 될 것입니다.
This year's summit begins with a ministerial-level meeting co-hosted by the UK and Ecuador, followed by an expert roundtable to address cyber threats while fostering digital innovation in a way that respects human rights and freedom in online spaces. Deeming South Korea a champion of democracy, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken remarked on the significance of the country hosting the summit independently for the first time outside the United States. The Summit for Democracy was first launched in 2021 under the leadership of US President Joe Biden amid the worrying rise of autocratic leaders and authoritarian governance around the world. Blinken called for collective efforts for democratic renewal to sustain faith in democracy.
In many places, basic freedoms have eroded. Electoral rights have come under assault. Corruption has eaten away at hope. As authoritarian and repressive regimes deploy technologies to undermine democracy and human rights, we need to ensure that technology sustains and supports democratic values and norms.
UK Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowding called for a full-spectrum response to a full spectrum of threats.
Increased cyber defences, tackling mis- and disinformation, protections for candidates at home, and global consensus abroad. We will not be afraid to call out this malign activity wherever we see it.
The plenary session of world leaders will be held virtually on Wednesday evening Seoul time, with President Yoon chairing the talk on technology, elections and fake news. Kenyan President William Ruto will lead the session on the Global South, and Danish leader Mette Frederiksen on inclusive society and youth empowerment. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, President Vladimir Putin won a landslide in Russia's election with no actual contender, cementing his already tight grip on power. In his victory speech, Putin warned NATO of World War III if there is any direct conflict. Chung Eun-ju has the latest.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has won a fifth term as the country's leader, following an election that's been widely criticized as lacking democratic legitimacy. Russia's Central Election Commission on Monday revealed that with 60% of the votes counted, Putin had an overwhelming lead with over 87% voting for the incumbent leader. Putin visited his party headquarters in Moscow on Sunday and called on Russia to become stronger and more effective, thanking the Russian people for voting.
Initially, I would like to thank Russian citizens. We are all one team. All Russian citizens who came to polling stations and voted.
The outcome means Putin, age 71, will be in office until 2030. If Putin completes the full term, he will overtake Joseph Stalin and become Russia's longest-serving leader in more than 200 years. Putin has had little to no challenge during his rule, with most opposition candidates either dead, jailed, or barred from running for office. In the face of Putin's predictable victory, Russia's opposition sought to put together a show of strength. Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Alexei Navalny, said Sunday that she wrote her late husband's name on the ballot. Navalny supporters also held demonstrations at polling stations throughout Russia while voting for other candidates or invalidating votes. In his election victory address to the press in Moscow on Monday morning, Putin said that Russia's armed forces were advancing in Ukraine every day and that Moscow's forces held the initiative on the battlefield. He also said the presence of Western troops in Ukraine could push the world to the brink of World War III. When asked about the potential for a direct conflict with NATO, he said he did not think that anyone was interested in such a scenario. Putin also said Russia was ready for talks on a French proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during the Olympic Games, but would need to take Russia's interests on the front line into account. Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
The collective action by junior doctors in Korea is spreading to their professors. The medical professors from Seoul National University, one of the country's major hospitals, have finalized their decision to leave by next Monday. Meanwhile, the government has announced a list of names of people who cannot be contacted via mail with return to work orders. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
Junior doctors are not alone in deciding to walk out. Medical schools professors have also chosen to submit their resignations starting next Monday, March 25th. Professors from nearly half of South Korea's medical schools were present at a meeting late on Friday, with those from 15 schools deciding overwhelmingly to resign. So far, professors from Seoul National University's medical school have decided to submit their resignation letters next Monday. The remaining 4 of Korea's Big Five are reportedly collecting opinions over whether and when to join. The exact dates could differ depending on the schedules of each medical school. The chief of the medical professors group strongly urged the government to back down from the plan to raise the enrollment quota at med schools by 2,000 from 3,058 per year starting in 2025.
We desperately ask for a first step to be made to start discussions. We ask the government even more. Please let go of the figure of 2,000. Otherwise, we cannot start discussions at all.
Meanwhile, on Monday evening, the Health Ministry made public the names of 1,308 junior doctors who have not been able to receive a return-to-work order by mail due to there being no address on file. The ministry said they may be punished under medical law unless they return their workplaces. During a meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure headquarters held on Monday morning, Health Minister Cho Tae-yul expressed serious concern. While underlining that it is not acceptable to negotiate while holding people's lives hostage, he urged professors to work with the government so that trainee doctors could return.
We should not negotiate over people's lives in any case. Please persuade trainee doctors and students who left hospitals and schools to return and participate in discussing reform tasks for the improvement of the healthcare system.
The minister said he would continue talks with directors, not only from the 5 major hospitals, but also those at national hospitals. Those talks are slated for Monday and Tuesday. He also mentioned that intensive care units and emergency rooms would be closely monitored to prevent medical disruptions. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And as part of the government's medical reform plan, President Yoon is promising measures for clear compensation to encourage more healthcare workers to enter understaffed wards like pediatrics. The president visited a children's hospital in Seoul on Monday to inspect the treatment of severely ill patients and offer words of encouragement to their families and carers. Yoon noted that the government increased support for pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology last year, but will consider raising it further to ensure hospitals are sufficiently funded and medical staff are rewarded for their work. Amid the ongoing strike by junior doctors, Yoon urged all doctors to consider Korea's rapidly aging society that would hike demand for health services and asked them to persuade their juniors in fulfilling a much-needed medical reform. Staying with the president, drastic measures is what President Yoon says will be taken to tackle South Korea's rising grocery prices, especially fruit, by injecting 150 trillion Korean won, or about $112 million or more if needed be. This as he hosted a policy review meeting today at a supermarket in Seoul.
먼저 농산물 가격이 평년 수준으로 안정될 때까지 기간, 품목, 규모에 제한을 두지 않고 납품 단가와 할인 지원을 전폭적으로 시행하겠습니다. 냉해 등으로 상당한 기간 동안 높은 가격이 예상되는 사과와 배는 더 파격적으로 지원하겠습니다.
Fruit prices in February surged more than 40% on year, which drove the overall inflation rate to 3.1%. Among the measures also include lowering tariffs on imported fruits, with items such as kiwis and cherries newly added to the list of benefiting items. During the discussion, the Deputy Prime Minister for Finance, Choi Sang-mok, along with agricultural and seafood ministers, briefed the president, while civil organizations such as a consumer organization voiced their concerns to the president and his aides. On the political front, Korea's 22nd general election is roughly 3 weeks away, and official registration is scheduled to start this Thursday. And that being said, political parties are now finalizing their candidate rosters. Our correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
The rival parties' candidate nomination procedures for April's general election are coming to a close. The ruling People Power Party nominated 3 more candidates on Sunday to wind up its official nominations. They have entered candidates in all of the 254 electoral districts in the country during a process that lasted more than a month. This is the first time in 16 years that the PPP has run in all districts. Of the 113 PPP members in the assembly as of February, 74 received official nominations. Their average age is around 58. The main opposition Democratic Party is also finishing up its nominations, finalizing candidates for 250 districts as of Monday. Of the 163 DP members of the assembly when the nomination process started, at least 64 members failed to receive official backing for a rerun. The average age of those nominated is around 57. On Sunday, the party held a special ceremony at the National Assembly, handing out certificates of nomination to its candidates.
Meanwhile, proportional representation candidates who aren't elected to represent a certain district but are elected based on voter support for their party of representation are also being listed.
The People Future Party, a satellite party created by the PPP, announced the final list of its 35 proportional representation nominees on Monday. The Democratic Alliance of Korea, a satellite party formed by the DP and other opposition parties, including the Progressive Party and the New Progressive Union, also has finalized a list of 30 nominees. The two main parties have not put forward any proportional representatives themselves, relying on their satellites to attract additional voters to earn more seats. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
In other news, Korea's southern resort island of Jeju seeks to expand its role on the global stage by cooperating with cities in other countries when it comes to new industries and solving challenging issues. To share its plans, Jeju invited ambassadors from dozens of countries. Our Park Gun-woo was there.
Jeju Island, a tourist mecca in South Korea, is taking steps toward becoming a pioneer of international diplomacy between local governments. And as part of that aim, Jeju has targeted becoming a leader in new industries, including space technology and urban air mobility, and solving global issues such as the climate crisis, while collaborating with cities in other countries.
Subnational diplomacy is needed to increase the number of tourists and promote exports overseas instead of just focusing on the metropolitan area.
While speaking about the importance of sustainable tourism, He also said Jeju will focus on decarbonization by utilizing renewable energy and implementing new transportation methods such as UAM. To share related plans, ambassadors to Korea from 25 countries, including France, Lebanon, and Guatemala, were invited to Jeju from Friday to Saturday as part of a diplomacy program. A visit to a factory run by Jeju Samdasu, a local public enterprise water brand that is consistently working to improve its carbon footprint, was one of the main items on the agenda.
They have been taking measures to take care of all the issues regarding climate change. And on that regard, this is something what the world needs.
During their stay, the ambassadors also experienced the cultural aspects of Jeju. Traditional performances were put on for the ambassadors, while traditional food made from regional products, including red-banded lobster, abalone, and sea urchin were served, so that they could feel the taste of Jeju. Hiking on the famous Jeju Orlet trails was another itinerary item for the diplomats to enjoy.
I was very impressed, of course, by the nature of Jeju, which is really very fascinating, with the beautiful sea and volcanoes and flowers.
He also spoke about future collaborative plans with Jeju.
As Jeju is developing green energy, green mobilities, and as in France, we are also working very hard to transition to that kind of future decarbonization. There's a lot that we can accomplish together.
Along with these efforts, Jeju also aims to host the APEC summit in November next year. All eyes are on whether the city will be chosen to host the event. 박건우, Arirang News, Jeju.
South Korean tech giants Samsung Electronics and LG Electronics both won big at China's largest consumer electronics exhibition, AWE. Samsung took home the Gold Award at the Appliance and Electronics World Expo for its ultra-large premium TV, the 2024 new QLED 8K. LG Electronics won the AWE Gold Award for the all-new Styler, a steam closet that removes wrinkles from clothes and sanitizes them. The AWE 2024 began last Thursday in Shanghai and lasted until Sunday.
The cold wind was strong this morning, and the temperature in Seoul this morning dropped to 1.4 degrees Celsius, 7 degrees lower than yesterday. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start at 3 degrees. However, mild conditions will persist across the nation during the daytime. Seoul will see highs of 11 degrees for the daytime. There will be a big contrast in temperature as warm spring weather returns during the day. Please take good care of your health. In eastern areas, a dry air advisory is in place. This will be relieved tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, with rain or snow falling all over the country. Heavy snow of up to 20 centimeters is forecast in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, so you should prepare in advance. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at -1 degree Celsius, Gyeongju 4 degrees. Highs in Busan and Gwangju will move up to 15 degrees, Daejeon 12 degrees Celsius. After the rain and snow stop, the late cold snap is expected to move away late this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Hope everyone has a great start of the week.